A massive fight at 140 pounds that I would say a few years ago would have been the fight, but still a fun fight. I'm talking about Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez. They are finally getting it on. I'm Dan Canobbio. He is the former world champion, Chris Algieri. And Chris, this fight, I'm still excited about it. These are two big names in the sport. These are two guys that are at the top of their game, or once were at the top of their game. Is it like 2 years too late? Maybe, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Josh Taylor and Teofimo.
Yeah, I mean, fight fans, great fight. Like, we love this fight. People in the sport, in terms of who they are as personalities, as boxers, as fighters, great matchup. 18 months ago, these guys were both at the top of their game and at the top of the game of boxing. Literally undisputed, both of them top of the sport. Fast forward to now, and it's like, where have these guys been? You know, their last couple performances. Well, one for Taylor against Jack Catterall, very disputed decision that he won. A lot of people thought he lost that night. And the Kambosos, who's coming off of, and Lopez coming off of the Sandor Martin fight, also a very disputed fight. So both these guys coming off of very disputed fights against relatively unknown competition here in the States, and now they're fighting each other, which like kind of erases all that, because it's like, all right, cool, we had a good fight.
So you're saying they went from undisputed to disputed?
Yeah, both of them coming off of disputed wins. So yeah, it's a good way to put it.
That's how fast things can change in this sport, and that's how I think it's so important to seize big fights when they're there. Teofimo would tell you back when he was fighting at 135 that I'm not long for this division. I want to fight Lomachenko, and he did, and he beat him. And then I had my sight sets on 140. And now we're seeing him have some issues at 140 pounds. And one of the names that he always had circled was Josh Taylor.
He wanted to go right to him.
Right, because Taylor was the guy that was the guy at 140 pounds. Some people think he still is the guy at 140 pounds. I personally thought Jack Catterall won that fight. I do think Taylor is still very good, but this is the type of fight where it's really hard for us to do our jobs. Like, our job is to gauge fights, right? Where's this fighter at right now? Where's that fighter at right now? How do we do that when one guy hasn't fought since February 2022, and the other guy, in Teofimo, hasn't looked sharp, like hasn't settled into the weight class yet, still has a lot of question marks. So it's really hard to figure out like who right now is trending in the right directions. Will this fight play out? Do you kind of feel the same way?
Oh, 1,000%. I don't know what to expect from Taylor at all. Literally, I mean, being out of the ring for so long, he looked very flat when he fought that last fight against Catterall. So yeah, I almost feel like he's already outgrown the weight class, and now he's got the foot injury coming off of that, saying we hurt his fascia.
Plantar fasciitis.
Yeah, dude. That means you're not going to be running. How's he going to make weight? And I know he cuts a lot of weight, and because he's big for the weight class. He's tall. He's long. He's got a long reach, wide shoulders. Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like he kind of outgrew the weight class, a while ago, and now we're coming off of long layoff and an injury to your lower body. So it's going to be interesting to see how that weight comes off in this fight and what he's going to be like on fight night. If he's not sharp, I mean, Teofimo can beat him.
Teofimo can beat him. That's the old Teofimo. He has shown flashes of having some of that power, but obviously the Sandor Martin fight showed a lot, man. Yeah. It showed a lot that he cannot handle movement that well. He cannot cut off the ring after the fight.
Can't make adjustments.
Can't make the adjustments, which we saw in the Kambosos fight too. And then afterwards, in the ring, after he got the decision, I never heard of this from a fighter before. Do I still got it? He says he was playing up to the mics. BS.
No way. That's like Kambosos saying that he didn't make weight on purpose.
Art of war.
Okay.
Art of war.
Yeah. Normally you hear the guy say that in the dressing room in the back. He asks his corner when no one else is around. Man, do I still have it? Which is a pretty common thing, actually. But to do it in the ring with media mics around you, oof.
I think he has a lot of self-doubt. I think he's rushing into this fight, and this is something we've talked about on the podcast. Is like, do we feel like, in a weird way, that they are kind of selling both fighters out, or kind of cashing both fighters out, I should say. Like, Josh Taylor, the shine has come off of him a little bit because of the Catterall and the inactivity. Obviously, obviously Teofimo Lopez, the shine is off of him as well. Let's just make this fight now because the other options are smaller fights. Let's try to make as much money for the fighters and for the promotion from a Top Rank standpoint.
Also, you got to think the way Top Rank operates. I mean, they're pretty cutthroat with their guys, and you got to perform or you're out. So matching them up, it's going to make the most money for them on both sides. It's going to make most money for each fighter as well, because they do care about their fighters getting paid. I do believe that. But listen, the loser's going to have a long road here. And they're putting up two guys that could go on to make all their money against other people. But like you said, it almost seems like they're both a ticking time bomb one way or another, and that their stardom train is starting to slow. So match them up now, let them fight each other, and then we got a guy we can push on and do a couple more fights. And then the loser, who knows? And only Top Rank can probably even cut him.
The 140 is loaded division. Regis Prograis sitting up top. Jose Ramirez lurking around. Subriel Matias is now a world champion. Gary Antoine Russell is in the division. Not to mention guys like Ryan Garcia should be at 140. Devin Haney will be at 140 soon. This is a fun division, and we'll see what comes out of the winner of this fight. Will there go? You know, Teofimo has told me and a lot of media members that I want to be undisputed, even though he was kind of disputed at 135. But I want to win multiple belts at 135 and 140, and he could do that. I mean, it's all there in front of him. A guy that we're kind of doubting right now, who, like you said, 18 months ago, was like a surefire top 5 pound for pound, biggest star, front cover of Ring Magazine, Fighter of the Year. Can't say enough good things about Teofimo.
I've called a number of fights. One of my favorite fighters to call. I love Teofimo Fight Weeks. I mean, his highlight reels are awesome. His performances are great. When he's in tough fights, they're still fun.
He's fun.
He's a very fun fighter.
He's an entertainer. He gets it. And in 2020, heading into that Lomachenko fight, and then afterwards, I thought he was on his way to be the biggest star in the sport. But my point is, he could very well get back on track. This is a huge opportunity for him. Does he deserve a fight with Josh Taylor? It's you can argue that all day. Like, that doesn't really exist in boxing. But he's getting the shot at Taylor and his title. It's all there right in front of him. He finds a way to beat Josh Taylor in this fight. He is now a 2-division world champion. Confidence is back. His dad's screaming. His dad's going to be screaming no matter what. But he's back on track, and that's good for him. That's good for Top Rank. It's good for boxing.
Yeah. I'm going to answer your question. Does Teofimo deserve the Taylor fight? No, obviously. He doesn't. You know who does? Jack
Catterall. Poor guy.
Jack Catterall, this poor kid. We've glossed over him because we're talking about these two great fighters in Taylor and Teofimo. But, dude, Jack Catterall, this poor kid, I feel for him. I don't think he is at the level of these type guys, which is why he has to push to the side. But still, that's just not fair, man. Boxing is not fair.
It's rough, man. I mean, they danced around. The Taylor Catterall saga played out for months, years. Yeah. I mean, the last nail in the coffin was the foot injury from Taylor. He says he's got plantar fasciitis.
And then they move on.
But then they just move on.
They just move on.
They just forget it. That's why I feel like Taylor's just like, listen, I don't want to fight Catterall again. It's a fight that I need probably for my legacy. Will it make me the most money? No. A Lopez fight in the States at the Garden will make me the most money. So he was just like, boom, businessman.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glossing right over it.
Well, and Top Rank is happy to do it, too. They're like, fine. All right, whatever. You take the heat for this. Let's make this fight.
You know what's interesting with Taylor, too? It's like he's talked about 147. He's like, I've always felt like the safety net for him was 147. Yeah. He was looking at Crawford. He was looking at some of the guys at 147. But I just don't think he has... I don't think he can bang with those guys at 147 and hold up. And I also think he's getting, obviously, like you said, too big for 140. He's in a weird spot now. Is he going to be a career 140, or is he going to try to move up to 147 where he's not going to have those same advantages that he has at 140 right now?
He's a tweener. He's a tweener between 140 and 147. 140 to 147 jump is one of the biggest in the sport. 7 pounds is a lot for a lighter weight class. It's also a big jump because 47 is the last weight class where you can wear 8-ounce gloves.
Wow.
So people don't think about that. Don't realize that the biggest guys in the world who wear 8-ounce gloves are at 147. That's why 147 is such a dangerous weight class. I struggled at 47. I had a bunch of my big fights there. Unfortunately, that's where most of my big fights were. But I was much better served for a 40. There's a big difference in those 7 pounds. And I think Taylor, I agree with you. I think he's going to realize that if he is to move up.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I never actually thought about that with the gloves. I think both guys need this win in their careers for 2 different reasons. Like, Taylor has become a heel. When he did the Catterall, he's very good at it, number one. But when he was winning the World Boxing Super Series and he was coming up, I think it was a different, a respect level. Like, this guy's damn good. But he's got a little quirky, and if you follow him on social media, you might not agree with everything opinions he puts out there. But you had respect for him. Where now, I don't know if that's the same. I don't think you can say that the same thing because of the Catterall win or disputed win and not rematching him. And with obviously with Teofimo, a guy that was a huge star at one point and beat Lomachenko and was sky high, he has had a lot of self-inflicted wounds too, whether it's his camp, whether it's the things he says, whether it's inflated sense of ego. I think both guys really need a win and to get their careers back on track, and that's what I think could make this fight intriguing. If it's not the same as it was 2 years ago, there are different storylines now. Both guys really need a win.
Yeah, and it's a do or die opportunity for both guys, but it's still a big fight. It's still a mega fight. This was like a super fight 18 months ago. Now it's just like a good fight.
Well, yeah, especially with the schedule that's being rolled out or has rolled out. Like if there was a time where this was the crown jewel of a boxing schedule. Now you can kind of supplement it in there. That shows you the health of the sport right now is pretty good.
And it shows you the unhealth of their careers at this point also. But yeah, no, all in, it's a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a fan of both guys in terms of their styles, and they're both offensive machines. So that should be a very, very interesting fight.
Well, let's get to the X's and O's here, how this fight will play out. I pulled up some numbers, as I always do. 83% of Josh Taylor's landed punches are power shots. Teofimo's around the same ratio. Not going to be a lot of jabs in this fight.
No.
They're going to be coming out throwing bombs. Who's going to get the better of who? How does this fight play out from an X's and O's standpoint?
So you got to initially lean towards Taylor for the size, right?
Okay.
We've seen Teofimo struggle at 40. Even when he fought Campa, Pedro Campa, like he's hitting him with shots that used to ice 35-pounders.
Yep.
Campa was walking through him, finally gets him later in the fight with a great combination, gets a good knockout. Then he fights Sandor Martin, who he's a good fighter. He's a very good fighter, but he's like a middle distance guy. He's not gonna ooh and ah you. So he didn't look great in that fight. Definitely struggled with size. Struggled with the movement. So when you take it like that, it's like, well, Teofimo's big thing at 35 was his technique and his power and being strong. We're not really seeing that at 47. At 40, Taylor is tall. He's long. He cuts a lot of weight. He's got good knockout power too. He's an offensive guy. He's a southpaw. So there's a lot of things that are going to be in Taylor's court when you're looking at strictly tail of the tape and lining up in terms of their career.
Yeah, but what about the inactivity?
Inactivity, coming off an injury, and making weight are three important factors that, again, when you look beyond the tail of the tape, that's when these factors roll in. And I think Barbosa was talking about this fight, and he said if Taylor's foot injury is still a problem, he's going to lose.
Wow.
Which is a very fair statement.
There's a lot of X factors in this fight now that I'm peeling back the onion here. It's like, yeah, Taylor has all the advantages, like you just said, that he's bigger.
Been at the weight longer.
He's got power too.
He's offensive. He's southpaw.
Right. Has fought the best at 140 and has come out on top. But the inactivity. Then you look at Teofimo, like he's got a lot of power himself, but also he's just more active.
Yep.
At least he has like 2 fights in the last year or whatever, 18 months. You can't say the same for Taylor. So I think a lot of these things are going to offset each other. Really hard fight to pick.
Well, and Teo is also he's hard to pick no matter what, because you got days where he shows up and he beats Lomachenko. Then you got days when he shows up to Kambosos and gets beat up.
Yeah, that
was it's crazy. Kambosos is gonna drop you. And
that type of fight, how long does that stick with a fighter? Because I was there ringside, and first of all, it was an epic night. It was just like one of those crazy fights and crazy performances from Kambosos. But it was also one of the worst game plans I've ever seen. 0 adjustment, 0 corner, just coming out there trying to take the guy's head off in round 1, getting dropped in round 1. Real humbling experience for Teofimo, because at that point he was sky high, right?
Yeah.
He had Triller throwing money at him. That fight ended up going off on the zone.
That ended up being a problem.
Yeah, at that point, the inflated sense of ego, like I talked about early on, he thought he was going to be selling out major arenas. He was talking about J-Lo walking him out. It's crazy what goes on inside his head, and I don't think it's always him. I think it's his team. But I forgot what point I was even trying to make here with Teofimo. He needs to get back on track. He needs to just simplify things. That loss to Kambosos, I think, is going to stick with him for a while.
You were asking me how long is going to stick with a fighter. So now, what came to light afterwards is the medical condition that was bothering Teofimo that night. He had something like a strained aorta.
Right. There were some people that didn't believe that.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I tend to believe fighters when they're talking about certain things, and that performance that night was just it was mind-blowing. But it makes sense if you're thinking, it's like, listen, I've gotten into fights with the flu before, and I was like, I got to fight as hard as I can for as long as I can, and I'm going to come out hard. I'm going to come out fast. I'm not really a fast starter. I've had to do that before. And, yeah, your health matters, and it has an effect, especially in big fights. So I get where he came from that. If that is the case, it's probably not going to stick with him that long. Like, hey, listen, it is what it is. I took my loss that night. I fought through it.
But he hasn't accepted the loss still. You ask him today, he's like, I won. Still.
Yeah. Well, he didn't.
But that's what I mean. It's like
he didn't win that night.
A lot of these guys are these two guys are holding on to their past a lot. That's an interesting storyline here. Is like both these guys have to flush the past.
Yeah.
Taylor's got to flush the Catterall saga and move on and try to get his career back on track. Teofimo's got to flush the Kambosos loss. Flush, not looking good at 140.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. The Sandor fight,
flush
all that and get back on track.
That people forgot about. He didn't look good at Nakatani. There was a lot of people giving him.
He was getting blasted right.
For Nakatani got hit and made no adjustments again.
Yeah, but after what did he do after that? He
knocked out Comey. No, he knocked out Comey.
He knocked out Comey, then he beat
Comey
Lomachenko.
in one round, and then in 2 rounds rather, and then he beats Lomachenko and looked phenomenal. I was in the room that round. He looked awesome. So yeah, you never know with that kid who's going to show up. If the guy shows up who we all want to, I think he can win this fight. I think he will win this fight.
That would be a big, huge win for Teofimo. I think that would be interesting for boxing. It'd be interesting to see if he does win, what's his mindset. Is he going to be still the brash guy, or is he going to say, you know what, like, holy crap, I got my career back on track. Maybe
be gracious about it.
Right, maybe a little more gracious, but I don't know if he has that in him because he has such a chip on his shoulder and such an entertainer. Interesting. I just talked myself into really being up for this fight.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, years ago, this was the fight. And when I got announced, I was like, yeah, it's a good fight. But a couple of years ago, this was the fight. But we still can get excited for this Josh Taylor Teofimo. Come on now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, listen, on paper, if I was, like I said before, if I was just looking at all the X's and O's, I got Taylor all day. All day. I think about him beating Prograis. I think about him beating Ramirez. Those are top tier undefeated guys at 140. Yep. If you look at Josh Taylor's record, all the undefeated guys,
it's pristine.
That he took so many O's on the way to get to where he is right now. Just looking at that, I'm like, oh, he's Taylor all day long. Yeah. But again, it's those things I mentioned, the inactivity, the injury, the foot injury, the weight.
Yep.
It's just those are really big obstacles to any fighter to stay. There's no consistency, but like. I don't know. Plus, and then we're coming off of a dubious decision win against a guy that,
mentally,
on any other day, he should have washed.
There's a lot of mental and physical for both guys. Let's go head-to-head matchup here. The 4 criteria is that you, Chris Algieri, make your picks.
Yeah. So power, chin, speed, boxing IQ. Power, I'm going with Josh Taylor based on the size and the weight class. Okay. So he's the bigger man. He's been there longer. He's shown power at 140. He dropped Ramirez twice in that fight with a hellacious uppercut and a straight left hand over the top. So I'm going with that, especially from what we've seen from Teofimo at 140. I'm a big fan of Teofimo, and I think he's a great puncher. I was really impressed with the power displayed in the Lomachenko fight, even though he didn't really hurt him or anything like that. I can see and hear the punches. But because of the weight class, I'm going with Taylor for power. Chin. I'm also going with Taylor because
I'm trying to think of who's seen Teofimo hurt. Oh yeah, he went down.
Kambosos dropped him. Yeah. Kambosos dropped him.
That was it.
Again, we're talking size again. Yeah. Taylor's the bigger man. Yeah, he got dropped with Catterall. It was a straight left hand, kind of clipped him behind the head. Only time I've ever really seen him hurt. And he fought Prograis, went 12 rounds with Prograis, fought 12 rounds with Ramirez. 2 very good punchers at 140. Was never hurt, never wobbled, never stung by either of those guys. Took some punches from Prograis. Eye was swollen shut and everything. I'm going with Chin with him as well. Speed, I'm going Teofimo. Teofimo, I think, has got the quicker hands. He pulls that trigger, man. Oof, that Comey you knock out. Man, they were both throwing right hands.
Both threw at the same time.
His got there first because of the speed, his ability to pull that trigger. Boxing IQ, I'm going to go with Teofimo on that one as well.
Interesting.
I think that his boxing ability is very underrated. He had Joey Gamache in his corner for a couple of those big fights, and Joey's a friend of mine. I talked to Joey about training with him. He goes, Chris, people don't know how good this kid can box. He is incredibly gifted defensively. His reactions, that sold me on Teofimo's boxing.
Not to cut you off, but why doesn't he have Gamache in his corner anymore?
I don't know.
That's the dad, I feel like. That's the ego or something.
Back to the IQ, though. Something else I saw. So the Richard Comey fight. I trained with Richard Comey for years leading up to that fight. And I was telling everybody in Top Rank, I'm like, Richard can punch. Yeah. Richard's going to get your young guy. He's coming up. He's not ready for the step up. It's way too big of a step. The morning of the fight, I'm in my dressing room. I'm calling the undercard. I'm in the not the dressing room, my hotel. And my nephew Michael asked me, he goes, "Who do you got?" And I go, I think Richard's getting knocked out. Yeah. And he goes, "What?" I go, "I think it's going to be early too." So I'm calling the fight. I'm with Christina Poncher. We're calling the fight for Top Rank International. And I'm seeing what Teofimo's doing. He found his distance in the first round by getting out-jabbed. I saw, and then in the second round, he closed the distance. And literally right before he lands the right hand, I'm speaking on air, and I say, I'm seeing something from Teofimo right now as he's finding and judging his range. That's really, and bang, the knockout.
Bang.
The kid's awareness and sense of distance is very, very good. So I'm going boxing IQ, Teofimo. Long way to get.
No, that's a great story. I love that. That's the insight that we want from you. Damn, I'm excited for this fight now. Prediction, I think, coming off of that, man, geez, it's hard not to go with Teofimo. I honestly think a lot of physical things are not there for Taylor.
Yeah.
I think it's going to struggle to make the weight. I think it's going to be tough on him. I think Teofimo has more natural talent right now. Does that make sense? I would say
he's not as physically hindered as Taylor maybe.
Right. So I think that Teofimo turns back the clocks, which is funny to say because he's only 24 years old, 23 years old. He channels his 2020 Teofimo, gets his career back on track. Decision.
Teofimo.
Decision, Taylor.
Decision.
No!
Teofimo.
I screamed really loud there. No! Teofimo decision.
Right. Teofimo decision.
You go.
Okay, my head goes with Taylor. My heart goes with Teo.
Yeah.
I want to see him back, and I think he can do a lot of good at 140. And honestly, I think he can still make 35. I think he could probably go back down, even though he's been saying for years he can't.
His ego won't let him go down.
He doesn't look any different at 40 than he did at 35. I think he comes in at 138.
Yeah.
So, but I'm hoping Teofimo can go back to the well one more time. He's so young, too.
Yep.
So I think I could see that. I think a lot of the out-of-the-ring stuff for Taylor might be having an effect on him. I think the timing is really tough for him to come right back into this kind of fight. And Teofimo goes back one more time and gets a big one.
There we go. They say a desperate fighter is a dangerous fighter. Two desperate fighters looking to get their careers back on track. Love this fight, Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.